We've been spending a couple days with it, and I'm really happy to be sitting down here with you. I'm curious, how did the idea for this first reach your ears? What was sort of the first moment where this came up to you?
Well, a lot of times the conversations we're having internally are about, what can we contribute? How are we adding something to the PC gaming community? So if you look at Index and Alex, that was for us trying to answer the question of, how can we push forward when we're designing software and hardware hand in hand to allow us to take advantage of this new opportunity of VR. It was an important step, and I think it sort of lays the ground for future work we're going to be doing on both the game side and the hardware side. That's sort of how the conversation goes, is what are we doing that's going to move stuff forward? I think a lot of gamers have always felt that there's not a great mobile gaming hardware device out there for us to use. So if I'm a customer, I'm either using touch, which is terrible for first-person shooters, or I have to go, in a proprietary direction that has really limited access to titles. And if I'm a developer, I'm living with those things and saying, I really hate having to apologize for the kinds of experiences we're giving people on the mobile device. So that, in that sense, it was a pretty natural conversation for us to have. And there are things at various time horizons that you're looking at. So obviously, I've been thinking a lot about brain-computer interfaces.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing where you're public about it way in advance of any sort of products or things like that. But it just sort of fits into that overall conversation. So it wasn't that strange a conversation. It was like we're always talking about mobile gaming platforms and the trade-offs that we feel exist for ourselves as game players and as game developers. So it was pretty natural.
So it sounds like you didn't really need much convincing. It was a pretty organic idea.
It's like any gamer. It's like somebody comes along and says, here's actually the kind of gaming experience where you can take the best games in the world and run them in a mobile environment. We all have known that forever, right? I mean, if you'd asked gamers 20 years ago, they would have been saying the same thing. It's just we're sort of at the point now where the technologies, the enabling technologies advance, the mobile gaming hardware has reached the point where we can really pull that off.
What does success, you just kind of mentioned what you were doing with Index and with Alex and trying to sort of move things forward there in that realm. What does success look like for Valve on this? Like monetarily, does the whole project need to break even? Does it need to be profitable? Does that matter? Is it about driving Steam's subscriptions, engagement? What's sort of the KPI here?
Well, I think it gets harder over time. We're a financially very successful company, right? And the problem with lots of interesting things is they tend to have exponential curves. And if you're looking at the wrong part of that curve, you're not making good decisions about the future, right? So with VR, our expectation is it's a very long haul and that they're fundamentally important technologies that are being developed. And if at any point you're sort of narrowly defining the goalposts and saying, well, how's that doing against, the latest CSGO, update? You're always gonna end up making bad decisions based on that. So for us, it's really, how does the press react? What are they saying about it? What are they saying about it a year later, right? What's the perception? What are gamers saying? What are their reactions? What are our partners saying are the kinds of things that are most helpful to us? Because our assumption is these are long-term decisions that we're making about how we can contribute to the health and the vitality of this ecosystem. And we're always going to be successful as long as that's continuing to happen. So if, there are people who have those kinds of opportunities, and it's really a question of do they make smart decisions, about how to keep the ball rolling down the hill. And for us, this seems like an obvious opportunity for us to address that. So in terms of feedback, it's really how are people going to react, right? We expect that we're going to sell a ton of these, but it's more important where everybody says, and we can't wait to see what comes next.
Yeah.
Or developers coming to us and saying, this opens the doors to a lot of opportunities. So it's just about those expectations about the future, which are going to be most critical in us determining whether or not we've been successful.
Pirlo, from your perspective, what does success look like on this project?
I think Gabe summed it up really well. If down the line we're talking to a bunch of developers on Steam and they're saying, oh wow, this really helped us connect to either a new set of players or players are that much happier playing in the mobile space, and we didn't have to do that much work for it, or even no work at all. I think this looks great from our perspective.
And if it opens up new opportunities for them when they're thinking about game designs, right? We've been sort of blocking a set of things off as kind of being static and fixed. And if they start viewing this as an opportunity to be more innovative, how can we evolve the input side of this? What are the other technologies that we can bring to this that enable new kinds of experiences and new gameplay mechanics?
Well, along those same lines, what have your previous adventures in hardware development taught you heading into this?
Well, I mean, that's a very long, every time we do anything, we tend to learn a lot. I think Index taught us a lot about the value of doing things hand in hand in software and hardware development, which is something that we expected, right? It was that I felt like we were really successful in capitalizing on, designing controllers at the same time we're designing Alex.
Yeah.
Trying to do stuff in a game really informs that. A lot of the technologies we've developed in some of these other hardware devices, like the game controller, applies directly to this. The learning curve has to be zero, right? You just have to be able to hand something to them and they say, oh, I know how this all works, right? It's like, oh, look, it does exactly what I expected. I used the touchscreen and it, worked properly. I'm used to, let's say, an Xbox controller. Oh, this behaves exactly how I'm expecting and the games are working. So that's an example of something that we learned there. Price performance is going to be one of the critical factors in the mobile space. And so we've had to be very aggressive in terms of pricing on the deck.
Well, speaking of which, I think this is the part where you get to tell me the price, because the audience will know by now, by the time this interview's up, but we've been seeing everything, and so we've actually been curious while we've been here. Now we know that there are multiple versions, all not teraflop-wise, not power-wise, but just we've got this different storage levels. So what is the price level here?
The three price points are $399 for $529 and $649. And the only difference between those is the amount of storage and the speed of the storage. So as you go bigger, we're also making it faster.
Yeah, and you've got an NVMe drive in there.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so that's the difference. But all of the other characteristics, in terms of the gaming performance that you're going to get, they're going to be identical.
I'm curious, what were some of the other names considered for Steam Deck on the whiteboard?
Steam Buddy, Steam Pal.
Very early on, we had pretty terrifying prototypes. So we gave them appropriate names like Ugly Baby and things like that. Those weren't great.
Steam Ugly Baby.
Yep. Yeah. So we didn't go for that as far as name goes.
So one of the really interesting aspects of this that I guess I wasn't expecting.
Good afternoon, everyone. Later today, President Trump and the First Lady will welcome King Charles and Queen Camilla for a state visit here at the White House. First Lady Melania Trump has led all of the preparation for the state visit, which will honor the long-standing and special relationship between the United States and the United Kingdom. As I told many of you on Friday afternoon, I thought that would be my last time taking your questions until after my maternity leave. But given the attempted assassination of the president and, quote, top Trump administration officials, as the depraved shooter noted in his manifesto at the White House Correspondents Association dinner on Saturday evening, I felt it was prudent to be here today to answer your questions and inform the American people about how the administration is responding to yet another attempt on President Trump's life. Saturday was supposed to be a joyful evening, celebrating free speech and the First Amendment with all of you, members of the press. Instead, the night was hijacked by a crazed anti-Trump individual who traveled across the country to assassinate the president and as many administration officials as possible. This is the third major assassination attempt against President Trump in 2 years. No other president in history has faced such repeated, serious attempts on his life. First and foremost, the President, the First Lady, and everyone in this White House are extraordinarily grateful to the brave law enforcement professionals who sprang into action to apprehend the would-be assassin and keep all of us safe. The President would especially like to express his gratitude to the men and women of the United States Secret Service who acted with the utmost professionalism, courage, and sense of duty. This includes the heroic agent who took a bullet to the chest. Thankfully, he was saved by his bulletproof vest. Minutes after returning here to the White House to the Oval Office, despite fighting Secret Service to try to stay and keep the dinner going on Saturday, ahead of addressing you here in the briefing room, President Trump was intent on speaking to this brave agent to ensure he was okay, and the agent assured the President that he was. As you know, I was seated next to President Trump and the First Lady when the shots were fired before Secret Service swiftly moved us to safety backstage. The President's calm in the face of chaos, while yet another individual was trying to take his life, was really remarkable to witness, and it's something I will never forget. President Trump is fearless because he loves this country, and he is willing to put his own life on the line to deliver on the promises that he made to the American public who elected him here into the highest office in the land. And while we are blessed to have a fearless president, we should not live in a country where such constant fear of political violence permeates our society every single day. We can and we should have fierce disagreement in this country. As you all know, we disagree often, myself in this role and all of you in the news media, but those disagreements must remain peaceful. Debating, peaceful protesting, and voting are how we need to settle disagreements, not bullets. Nobody in recent years has faced more bullets and more violence than President Trump. This political violence stems from a systemic demonization of him and his supporters by commentators, yes, by elected members of the Democrat Party, and even some in the media. This hateful and constant and violent rhetoric directed at President Trump day after day after day for 11 years has helped to legitimize this violence and bring us to this dark moment. Those who constantly falsely label and slander the president as a fascist, as a threat to democracy, and compare him to Hitler to score political points are fueling this kind of violence. The left-wing cult of hatred against the president and all of those who support him and work for him has gotten multiple people hurt and killed, and it almost did so again this weekend. When you read the manifesto of this shooter, ask yourselves, how different is the rhetoric from this almost assassin than what you read on social media and hear in various forums every single day? The answer, if you're being honest with yourself, is that there is no difference at all. Much of the manifesto of the would-be assassin is indistinguishable from the words that we hear daily from so many. For example, as the First Lady of the United States pointed out this morning, just 2 days prior to the shooting, ABC's late-night host Jimmy Kimmel disgustingly called First Lady Melania Trump an expectant widow. Who in their right minds says a wife would be glowing over the potential murder of her beloved husband? And having experienced what I did with the First Lady on Saturday night, I can tell you that she was anything but that. This kind of rhetoric about the president, the First Lady, and his supporters is completely deranged, and it's unbelievable that the American people are consuming it night after night after night. As President Trump said on Saturday night at this podium, we as Americans must recommit ourselves to resolving our differences peacefully and uniting around the shared values that make our country great. The deranged lies and smears against the president, his family, his supporters have led crazy people to believe crazy things, and they are inspired to commit violence because of those words. It has to stop. And one more point. Saturday night served as yet another reminder of how important it is to fund the Department of Homeland Security. It is shameful that the United States Congress has kept this vital agency defunded for 73 days. The longest shutdown of a federal agency in U.S. history. The Secret Service is a vital component of DHS. It has been directly impacted by this reckless political gamesmanship. Everyone in this room who was there on Saturday night witnessed the heroes of Secret Service and federal law enforcement jump into action in the face of grave danger and uncertainty. Agents put their own lives in harm's way to protect the president, the First Lady, the Vice President, and members of the cabinet. One agent can be seen in video footage literally jumping onto the stage, not knowing where the attacker was or where the bullets were coming from at that point, to place his body in front of the President of the United States. These men and women are heroes. They perform their duties daily, and they have children and families too. And they do it despite the political turmoil surrounding their agency. Make no mistake, this defunding of DHS should be a national scandal. If Republicans defunded DHS and we saw another attempted assassination on a Democrat president, I would hope that the media coverage would be relentless and unforgiving, and I hope that it continues to be now. With the World Cup, America 250, the 2028 Olympics, and a presidential election all ahead, the Democrats' obstruction is placing an enormous and totally pointless burden on the Secret Service that can get more people killed. Enough is enough. There should be no further debate about this. Democrats need to do what President Trump has been calling on them to do for 73 days in a row and fund the Department of Homeland Security, period. This is a national emergency, and every member of Congress needs to put their country over party and get the Department of Homeland Security funded. With that, I will take a few of your questions today. Daniel, thank you for being here. Why don't you kick us off?
Thank you, Karoline. The president, Saturday after the assassination attempt, came here. He emphasized that law enforcement did their job, keeping everyone safe over dinner. House Speaker Mike Johnson came out and said he believes the president needs greater protection. What is the White House's message to the millions of Americans who wake up here today nervous, uneasy about the safety of the president at events like this and the safety of other cabinet members?
Well, we certainly understand their fears and their worries. As you heard from the president himself, he continues to have trust in the United States Secret Service. As I just said, these are great men and women who are doing their jobs and performing their duties honorably. As we all witnessed on Saturday evening, within minutes, the president, the first lady, the vice president, members of the president's cabinet were ushered out of the room. The perpetrator who sought to inflict massive harm, as we all now know with the release of the manifesto on administration officials and the president himself, was stopped at the security perimeter that was set up. He tried to charge through it, as you saw on video, and he was quickly neutralized by Secret Service, and thank God that he was. With that said, obviously the White House is always asking the tough questions and ensuring the safety of the president. I understand there will be a meeting early this week convened by the White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles with top DHS leadership, members of the United States Secret Service, and our own operations team here to ensure the safety and the security of the president, as we do have many of these major events moving forward. So we're always monitoring operations and procedures, always asking the tough questions to ensure the president is safe, and the American people should be assured there's no higher priority for the president and his staff than the president's safety.
Caroline, Friday you said that you thought that gaggle out of the sticks would be your last one for your baby. Back in 2024, when the president had the attempt on his life in Butler, you cut your maternity leave short back then. You're obviously back here today after Saturday. Can you just elaborate a little bit why you felt it was important to be here to bring to the media and talk to the American people from the stand?
Sure. It's sort of crazy timing when you put it that way for both children with 2 assassination attempts against the president. I'm